Joshua, aka Tyler Cruver. We're gonna figure out what to call you by the end of this. But all the way from Tennessee, man. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Doing good, doing good. Excited to be here. Excited to have a good conversation here. So appreciate you inviting me on.
So you and me, we're the same, man. I am Joseph Wesley. So if somebody calls and asks for Joseph, I'm like, yeah, he's not in. I know it's the government looking for money. Like, no, he's gone. Is
Yep,
that
pretty
you?
much. Yep, 100%. Yeah, like anybody who knows me or anybody I have conversations with, like they know me by Tyler, my middle name. But my legal first name is Joshua. So anytime I sign up for something or have to put my they force me to put my first name on something, it's Joshua. Whenever something comes in the mail or so get a cold call or something like that, it's like, hey, is Joshua there? And I'm like, yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, but now you put it everywhere. It's on your website, it's on LinkedIn. So why not just go by Tyler?
Yeah, well, I do go by Tyler, but I was kind of forced to go by Joshua on LinkedIn because they only verify your first name.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I tried to put it as Tyler, but I can't verify the account, and
That's
they
because
care
you're
about
a
that if
young
you want.
buck. When I signed up 20 years ago, you could be Wes, and it didn't have to be Joseph.
Times have changed. Times have
Oh
changed.
man.
They're not quite as loose as they used to be, I guess.
So I ran across you kind of on a tech side of things. I saw what you're doing with Clay, and then because Clay I ran across in a sales forum of salespeople. And I try to stay up with things, but like I didn't know what Clay was. And then there you are with your offer. And I'm like, is this guy techie? Is he sales? Is he entrepreneur? I'm like, what the heck? And kind of a little bit of everything. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say the three things that you just described. I would describe myself as those three things, or at least strive to describe myself as those three things.
But you cut your teeth door to door. What were you selling? Security, alarm systems?
Yep, that was right. That was right. Went door to door. Alarm sales was the worst sales job ever, but I did learn a lot. I will be honest. Like you want to learn like the core fundamentals in a very rude way on how to sell. Do door to door or something of that sort. So
Did you do it in
I
Tennessee?
always I did in North Carolina. At that point, I was living in North Carolina. So if you were in Raleigh, Durham area and you got a door to door salesman for alarms, then there's a chance it could have been me. So this was back
Man, this was
a while.
this was probably about 12 years ago. And because I'm trying to think, my 16-year-old, she was about 4. She was old enough to like walk to the door and open it, like if the doorbell rang, right?
Hmm.
But we had the door open, and living in California, the weather's usually pretty nice. So you can just keep your doors open. And we had
Hmm.
a screen door, but we were having some work done. Guys were we were putting in a sidewalk like straight up to the house, a pathway up to the house from the sidewalk, so you didn't have to walk around the driveway, right? So we had the workers doing stuff, and we were widening the driveway, and so we got all these workers here, and we had this big diesel excursion parked in front of the house, and we hear the doorbell, and we had this big lab. You don't think of labs as being mean, and he wasn't mean, but he had the meanest bark ever. We had him, I don't know, 10 years, and he would still scare me when he would bark and like surprise me. It was so loud. And we hear the doorbell, then we hear the dog barking, then we hear the screen slam shut because it's got this big, strong spring. And then we think for half a second, we should go check on what that was, because we knew that our daughter had a tendency to open the door, right? And we go out and look, and there's this door-to-door alarm salesman on the roof of our excursion, because our dog. So
Oh no.
our daughter opened the screen. Decker went running. This boy went running. My wife goes out, and she's mortified. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Blah blah blah. Are you okay? Yeah. Oh yes, ma'am. I'm fine. Like what? What do you do? What? How can I help you? What? I sell home alarms, and I don't think you need us. She's like, yeah, you're right. We don't need you.
That's a fair estimation.
My gosh, that was crazy. So, but you did it for over a year. So, I mean, dude, kudos to you.
Yeah,
That is rough. I mean, are
yeah.
people
I was.
nicer in the South?
Depends on the person. Some of them, yes. I have a funny story of I door knocked on this one lady's house and started chatting. She invited me in, and I think I was probably there for like 45 minutes just chatting with her and everything like that. And finally, I was there for a reason because I was, I had my list of like old contacts and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, are you, X, Y, Z and that kind of thing. She's like, oh no, that's not me. I'm like, what? I mean,
Oh,
you
it
just
was
let me in, and
she was a referral, or you thought it was a
no,
referral?
it was wrong address. So like the street had changed entirely, and I asked her about it, and she's like, "No, actually, it's around the corner and stuff like that." And I had been actually like using this person's like the person I thought it was name and stuff like that. And, 'cause
Oh,
I had kind of a rough appointment set up with them, and she was just chatting away. We were having a whole conversation. She
so
was
now you're late
interested.
to
She
your real
was,
appointment.
hey, yeah, they were super mad because they had an actual appointment with them, and they were like, "Dude, you're like 45 minutes late." And I'm like, "All right, I got a story to tell." And I told them, and they're like, you're not the only one. And they had told me a story that they had actually ordered like concrete and like had some like under like foundation work and stuff like that. The crew showed up to this other lady's house, started doing the work, realized it was the wrong house. And in that case, it was the same thing. Like she just let them do the thing. And she
My
just
gosh.
she knows very well, like this is not the right house.
Oh,
So I wonder what thing I'm gonna get for free and stuff. So
I'd be
uh
pissed. Oh,
so
that's crazy.
yeah, I
So
had a lot of really good experiences, to be honest. Though. I mean, sometimes you have some bad ones, but I will always say, um, I was always shocked at some of the places that I could get in just by like showing up and asking. And that was a really good life lesson I
you're talking
learned,
about
actually.
like homes or businesses?
Both, both. I mean, the home's a little bit more shocking, to be honest, but both. And I think that was a really good life lesson of like things that look like you don't have access to, just showing up and knocking, showing up and just asking. You'd be surprised the places that you'd get in just by being present, just by being there and asking.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a good lesson. Golly, this was probably around 2006. I was living out here, and I was with a tech company out of Austin. We moved from Austin because I was covering the West Coast, and sold these pretty advanced computer systems. And my manager flew out, and so I had some meetings set up, and then we were meeting a partner company for drinks. And so we got done a little bit early, and so we're heading over. You know, you're in LA, so like you never want to cut it close because it could be 30 minutes, could be 3 hours, right? So, but we're pretty early, we're pretty close. And I look up, and there's a building, it says Penthouse, right? Like Larry Flint's Penthouse magazine. And I'm like, what? That's here? And it was, 8 or 10 stories. I don't know, big building, but not massive. So I whip in there, and my manager's like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, stand by. So I go walk in, and I look, and they only had the top floor. I guess they owned the building and had the name, but, rented out the rest. And I get on the elevator, and two guys are already on, and they had already hit the 8th floor. So I knew they worked up there, right? So I just start chatting them up. I go, hey, who's the IT guy? Who's the IT director up there? And they go, oh yeah, Tyler. Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, that's his name. So I kind of fiddle fart around on my BlackBerry back then, and let them walk in. And once the door closes, I walk up to the receptionist, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here to see Tyler. Oh, okay, gotta tell him who's here. Right, Wes Schaefer. Oh, okay. I go sit down, and you sit in a lobby at the dentist, right? And you have like National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, Cosmopolitan. Not at Penthouse. You have Penthouse laying around. I'm like, what do you do? Do I look at it because it's their material? Do I not look at it because there's this female receptionist? So I'm like, all right, I just leave it there. It took a couple minutes. The guy comes out and goes, hi, I'm Tyler. Go, did we have a meeting? I go, no, I was just in the area. Just want to stop by. Oh, he's like, man, I thought I missed something. Well, what do you do? Oh, come on in. He dude invited me in. So it's like, just ask, right? What could he do? He could say, no, I'm busy. But yeah, what do they say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. And at the very least, you have a good story out of it. So
Yeah.
hopefully you got
So,
a sell out of it as well. But at the very least, you got a good story.
did you make decent money?
I mean, it was I didn't really have that much experience, so it was like, well, I mean, I think for the amount of experience I had, like it was good. I mean, at the time, it afforded a pretty. I mean, the Southeast is not super expensive, but it afforded a pretty good living for that year. I'd say I moved on from there and kind of kept moving up and
Yeah.
doing things that are a little bit better, but
Yeah, that's
it did
cool
okay.
though. I mean, it made you tough, right? I mean, it gave you some thicker skin, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
I think a lot of people miss that. I work with some tech companies now, and these AEs, salespeople, they're so pampered. They'll have SDRs and BDRs and all these layers of protection. I'm like, you get a lead, send it to the salesperson, let them qualify them. What?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, let them do their job. It's like, why insert all these hoops to make the prospect jump through, and plus it costs money. You're delaying the sale, you're pissing off the prospect, and you're adding unnecessary complexity and expense to your business. Like, don't do that.
yeah.
So how
One of
did
the
you
things.
go ahead?
Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna go to the next thing, but go ahead. I don't want you to lose that train of thought.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I can directly draw a correlation from, like whenever I first started doing doing stuff like that, to now is I was always motivated to like, all right. I mean, being like uh rejection adverse, like not wanting that rejection, obviously. I was always really creative and like trying to figure out different ways, different things that I could do to kind of make it work better. Even things that were like really, really creative and stuff like that. Like we did alarm systems at one point. I convinced my boss to let me buy like this box of like a couple hundred smoke detectors, and I would show up and be like, "Hey, we're giving out free smoke detectors. Would you like me to put one in?" And they're like, "Sure, why not?" And I would go in and like while I'm installing, I'm like, "Hey, well, by the way, I see you don't have the XYZ and that kind of stuff." It worked well, but I would actively try to figure out ways that weren't normal because I'm like, I don't want to get rejected constantly.
Yeah.
And that was
How
a
much is
really
a
good
smoke
like,
detector?
oh, they were like maybe $5-10. Like when you buy them in bulk. I mean, it's a security company. They have equipment. They can get really good rates for that kind of
I mean, that's
stuff.
still $1,000. You get 100 of them.
Yeah, but I mean, whenever you close a couple of deals from it, and it
Yeah.
has you know
Were they just
four or
battery
5,000.
operated?
Yeah, yeah, just
And people let you
uh,
just come in and just glue it to their ceiling or whatever, screw it in.
sometimes, sometimes, yeah, enough times apparently. So
So it worked.
uh, it did work some. Yep, yep.
That's
So,
cool.
but I can directly say like that kind of mindset like is that stuck with me and that continued to develop. And now working with Clay and working with this kind of in between area of like sales and marketing is this kind of like this growth engineering area. It's very much creative, and it's not about doing the things that everybody else is doing, doing the things that are normal. It's about, okay, what things can I do to get attention, or get uh, break through the noise, while also managing, something that's scalable, something that's not super expensive, and things like that. Like figuring out how to creatively do that is what I do on a daily basis now. So I can draw that direct correlation to that in the beginning of my career as well.
Yeah. So you did the door to door for a year or so, but then you went to another company like as management in the same field?
It wasn't exactly management. So I did go to another company, but it was a kind of like a technical account manager kind of thing. So it was half technical and half sales. The reason I could do that was because as a sales rep, I would go out to all the installations and I would help the technicians, because I let the technicians go out once and he did a horrible job, and I lost the sale, and
Oh,
I lost the commission for it. And I'm like, that's the
yeah.
last time. Never again will that happen. So every single one, I went out to the installations and I helped. I actually was told the technician, like, put me to work. I'm here to help you. If you finish an hour or two early, like, I won't say anything. I don't really care. I just need to make sure that this goes well. And I
Yeah.
did that enough times where like I could do all the work myself as a technician. So I moved on
Yeah.
to another company and basically was like a half technical, half sales. I still did sales, but I also had the technical expertise, which was a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I did that a lot. I was with several tech companies over the years, and just out of necessity, I would learn this stuff. And not that the techs would mess up the install, but I just wouldn't always have them with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Texas, I was with a company. We were headquartered out of Utica, New York, right? Very hard to travel out of, and had 3-state territory. And if I waited to have an expert with me to do demos, I'd have gotten a tenth of the work done. So, you just learn it. And so I'd handle my own demos, process the order, then do the training, to deliver it. If I had somebody, like, I'd take them, right? If I, and when I had an SME that was available, I mean, we filled the calendar. It's like, I'm going to use the crap out of you. But couldn't rely on it, and I think more than ever that's happening, even in software sales. I mean, you got to learn the product. Um, and there's always two sides to the coin, right? I tell people, give me an overview of what you do, what problems that you solve, who do you help. I can start selling that stuff today, right? I've got enough experience. I know how to read people. I know how to ask questions and listen, go deeper without being an expert, but when you are an expert, you're just that much more effective, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you use it to listen and not lord it over somebody or talk down to them, right? You don't know. I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing this 10 years. Just go sit down in the corner. I'll get this all fixed up, and you're not qualified to touch this. I mean, I've seen people with kind of like these big egos, right? Like, good luck with that there, brother. Uh, so how'd you make that transition out then? So you did a little career
Yeah.
break, I see. You traveled a little bit, and then bam, after COVID, you jump into SaaS.
I did, yeah. So I was in the Allard world for a while and was finally like, no, I was kind of slowly progressing with that, but I basically wanted a remote job, and I'm like, physical security is literally like never going to happen. Like it's just not compatible with the industry at all. So I was like, all right, well, I want to get a remote job. But I also want to take a break before like if I'm going to dive into a career, like, all right, that's a commitment. I wanted to go do something else first, like something that's just not what I know I'm going to be doing long term.
Yeah.
So I actually got a contract to teach English in China. That was it was a pretty good paying contract, to be quite honest. I was surprised, but I was scheduled to start December, the same month that COVID hit.
Mm,
So I was went back to Tennessee to visit some family because I was going to be gone for the next year on contract. And the HR department literally called me up and was like, "Hey, something's weird going on over here in
yeah.
China. Like, just wait there. Like, we're going to pay for your ticket, so don't worry about it. Like, if it costs more, don't worry, that's fine. Spend a little bit more time with your family, and then we'll let you know. And we'll just check in every couple of days, and we'll let you know when it's ready to go." And then, of course, as days turned into weeks, turned into months, and then finally, I'm like, "No, I'm out. Like, I don't want this
Yeah.
anymore. Sorry, this is too
Yeah.
much."
I
So
wouldn't
I
mind
ended up.
traveling. I wasn't afraid of it, but I don't think I'm going to China during COVID.
Well, it wasn't COVID at the time, but afterwards, I'm
Okay.
like, nope.
What
Yeah,
was
this is
it?
before. Well, it was. I got the job before COVID,
Okay.
and then COVID's hit. Like what would have been my first month working there.
Yeah. Oh God.
Um, so I basically canceled the contract because I'm like, no. Like, I mean, beforehand it's fine, but afterwards, like
Yeah.
this is not. There's a pandemic going on, and it started there, and I don't. Nope, nope. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So
Good for you.
so I just taught online for a little while, and I did do some traveling after that, which was nice. But did that for a little bit, and then started a little sooner. Started doing like some freelance work and stuff like that, doing like lead generation, development, stuff like that. And then slowly eased my way into SaaS. Just the last couple of years, and specifically started getting into the Clay, kind of like this the growth engineer side of things, which is really new. You were found Clay and kind of found that world, and I honestly think that's going to be a really big shift for sales and SaaS in general for the next probably several years at least.
So, but walk me through that though. I mean, you had sales experience and you had a technical aptitude, right? But what was the motivation? What was the compelling reason for a SaaS company to bring you on? Because you didn't have that direct experience.
Yeah, and I would say in the beginning, like I did work doing some freelance work, and that was with some SaaS companies, so that was kind of my way to break into it.
Okay.
And then went in like full time with the company, and basically used that as experience, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, in the beginning, especially whenever you're starting off in like a lead generation kind of role, I had shown in the past, like, look, I've done sales experience, I've done stuff with SaaS, be it
Right.
not full
Okay.
time, but I've done both of those, and I can work my way around a conversation, which for a lot of SaaS companies, I would say like that's enough to get started. So,
Yeah, it
if you
is.
can close some stuff on that, then it's great. Especially whenever I can say like, yeah, I've done door to door sales. Like this is nothing. A lot of
Yeah.
VP of sales are like, wow,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
Amen.
that's
Yeah.
true.
If you can handle that, you can handle the phone.
Exactly.
And did you find that to be true? I mean, was it a piece of cake working the phones compared to knocking door to door?
I wouldn't say it's a piece of cake, but I mean, I would prefer cold calling than door knocking. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely prefer that in a heartbeat. So,
Yeah. That's cool. So, all right. So you're in there, you're getting after it. Did a little freelance work, and then what? Well, you did that for a few years, right? A couple different places,
mhm.
and then but still, it's only a few years, and then you launch your
Yep,
own thing. Uh,
yep. So towards the end of that, started to transition out of that, and kind of was working in my own agency, doing some freelance work. Um, Basically, seeing that there was a really big change in kind of how like lead generation was done, and there was a lot of big companies that had really good funds that just weren't really doing this very well. And I'm like,
mm,
I think that I could probably do this a whole lot better on my own, to be honest. Because a lot of those restrictions are like, hey, here's the software, here's the processes, this is how it should be sold. And I'm like, I don't really have a choice. Like, I have to do that. But to be honest, like, it's just not a very good way of going about doing things. So I started kind of doing my own agency with that. Ended up doing pretty well with that and getting some good results. And then that quickly snowballed up into getting connected with a lot bigger agencies that were a whole lot bigger than myself, and then all of that accumulated into being merged into C17, which is where I work now. Is one of three agencies that came together for that.
so when you're doing this on your own, like, were you acting like as an affiliate or like a certified partner of some of a tech company? Like what were you selling?
Yeah, so it would vary some. So there was a couple of clients that I did like an advisory role for. So they didn't really want people to be doing work. They wanted people to, just be providing advice and stuff like that. I had a couple of those clients. Those are really fun. They're really like low pressure, but they're also nice because you just kind of set, a weekly meeting or something like that. And, they describe what they want. You go through kind of as a consultant in that regard. Those are fun, to be quite honest. I really like those. So that's one hand of it. And then the other hand is companies that actually say, yes, we are wanting like individual contributors, but we don't necessarily have the expertise to hire this in-house, or we don't want to hire it in-house, or we kind of want to like dip our toe into it and try it a little bit first. There's a variety of reasons why people do that, but I had some of those clients as well. And for those, you're not just consulting, you're actually like doing the work, like you're actually putting up some numbers.
Right. Cool. And so what kind of like freedom were you lacking, that you found on your own? Was it Because when you talk about lead generation, I mean, were you running paid ads? Were you blogging? Were you using tech to scrape and do cold emails? Like what could you do differently that you couldn't do as an employee?
Yeah. So in some of the companies that I was working for, it was primarily doing cold email. There's a little bit of a variety of stuff that goes in there, but that's the main one. Never did anything with like paid ads or anything like that. But the biggest one being cold email. And I would say the biggest difference of doing that in a freelance mode versus working with a company is being able to control your own tools and your process, because it's a highly, highly technical process. I mean, you can get a list, you can throw it up into some emails and a sequencer and just throw it out, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get anything from that. And maybe you will, maybe you won't. But in order to do it at a really high quality, like it's a very technical process, and it's a field that's changing like every week,
Yeah,
constantly. So just because you know what you're doing this month may not mean that you know what you're doing next month. You have to
yeah,
really stay on top of it.
yeah. It's
Um,
insane.
so being able to move quickly with that was one thing, and then being able to kind of craft the process and the tools was another thing.
Yeah,
Those are
but then you
really,
got to
really
pay for
big.
the tools yourself. I mean, these things
Yeah,
add up.
they do. They do. Yeah, that's definitely a portion that you have to budget in with that. Thankfully, I think it's one of the benefits of working with like an agency is that, if you work with an agency that has several clients, they're pulling that cost
Yes.
across several clients, because a lot of those tools, yes, they cost more and you're using more volume and that kind of stuff, but not exponentially. So like if you have five companies using the same tools and those five companies are buying their own packages of stuff, it's way, 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 way more than one company that has like enterprise plans with each of those or
Right, but
volume
it's kind of
plans.
the chicken and the egg, right? Because I've been looking at this, at all these different tools. That's how I ran across you. Right, I'm looking at like what is the modern tech stack, and I mean, dude, it's 5 to 12 different tools depending on the size of the company. And if I go and buy, let's say I buy 7 of these tools, even if I just subscribe and just do month to month, but get their agency or enterprise package, 7 tools, say they're $300 a month, and some are more than that. You get to the enterprise and it's easily more than that. But I can easily now I'm signed up for 2 or 3 or $5,000, $10,000 a month in recurring software. Now, yeah, sure, I can get a client and there's a value proposition there. So, hey, instead of 10 grand a month, for all this software, why don't you pay me 7 grand a month and I'll give you, I'll do all that. You'll have the full benefit of all those tools and somebody knows how to use them. Okay. Hey, sign me up. Right. I mean, it's a clear value proposition for them, but that assumes I can make that. I got to go make 2 of those sales just to make 4 grand. Right. If I'm paying 10 grand a month for these tools, I got to make 2 at 7 grand. Or maybe I make them at 10 grand, right? But
Mm.
I got to go make those sales. So like, how do you balance that? It's like a chicken and the egg, right? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're getting started, like generally your first couple of clients, like you're breaking even, because that's covering your expenses, that's covering your tools and different things like that. But ideally, the next few after that are that's where you get paid. That's where your full payment is, which is good. And then after that, the more you have, the better kind of that value is built in for both for yourself and for your clients as well. But yeah, it's just you're right. That chicken and egg problem is quite hard because those first few, you may be billing a client for less than it costs you just in expenses to do it.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
a hard thing to swallow. But it's I mean it's necessary. Like that's just kind of how it works. That also goes in your favor on the back end.
Yeah, but I mean, so did you just weigh the risks and say, "Screw it, I'm jumping in"?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I mean I had a couple of clients in the very beginning that definitely helped. So rather than just saying like, oh, I'm going to get all this stuff together and then go for it, it helped whenever you're like, all right, well, here's your first or second client. Now you've kind of covered your expenses. So now you got to figure out how to pay yourself, which is fine. Like you can like
Well,
honestly,
hey,
like if
but breaking even is better than going into debt. So,
it's true.
uh, and it changes your mindset when you're like, okay, at least I got all these tools. Yeah, I'm not making money yet, but I'm not paying either. And you can still use those tools for yourself. So, I mean, there's something to that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, you also got to remember, like, you are a growth agency, so you should be good at growing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, a lot of people
that's a
aren't.
good
I
thing.
mean, it's, the old, the carpenter with the creaky deck, what's the cobbler, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. I mean, we neglect ourselves. We don't take our own medicine. We don't eat our own dog food, right?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Um, a lot of the clients come from referrals, to be quite honest. I would say like my first five, I did not even do outbound to get. I think one of my second client, which is really good. I enjoyed working with them. But he asked me one day, he's like, Tyler, what do you do for you to find clients? Like what is your process? And I'm like,
Like
I
pray,
haven't
burn
I
incense.
no, because at that point, I hadn't actually done any email outbound as an outbound growth agency. And he was like, don't you find that a little ironic? And I'm like, well, I do, but I'm also going to enjoy it as well. It's
Yeah,
not out of necessity. It's just things were beneficial at that point. So.
yeah, and I get it. It's like I see, you see a Facebook ad for somebody that says, hey, learn how to do copywriting. Uh, and you say, well, copywriting is the end all be all. Why don't you just keep doing that? But on the flip side, it's like be everywhere. Get a billboard, do direct mail, sponsor a NASCAR. I mean, I don't know, do it
Yeah.
all and see where you find the people. So it's like it's okay. And honestly, if you're making enough money to meet your goals, like yeah, you
Hmm.
know what, referrals are enough.
That's it. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and because obviously you know what you're doing if you're doing it for someone else. Because I remember people, I sold a lot of Infusionsoft, and they have stuck to their guns to keep it small. Like they want to support the small business. And at one point, I mean, they had hundreds of employees, so they outgrew their own system, and so they had to use Salesforce and NetSuite and whatever. And so, like, I didn't hold it against them. Like they stayed true to their values. Like we're making a product for small business. We are no longer a small business. That's okay. We still want to help small business owners. So, it cuts both ways. So as you got into doing this, and was it trial and error? Were you just testing different tools on the marketplace, seeing what works? Like, were you just curious? Because I mean, a few years ago, cold email was a lot easier. I
Hmm.
I don't like it now. I've never really liked it. I haven't really done it. I've helped a couple clients do it that were already doing it, and they brought me on just to help them in sales and marketing in general. So I tried to help them optimize it, but I don't know. I feel like it's a little underhanded. But
Yeah, it's it's a very unique medium, and I will say, like now, it's expanded to where like with the tools, at least what we're doing with C17 now. Like it's not just the cold email. Like there's the whole suite of like your whole go to market strategy, and email really leads into a lot of different other things as well. But in general, like yeah, it's a very unique area. It has a lot of bad reputation for people who have basically just said like I'm gonna pull the trigger and I could send a million emails, so I'm going to. And unfortunately, that gives the rest of us a bad name. But whenever it's done really well, it's a really magical tool because you imagine like you pull together like a really good list of 10, 20,000 contacts that you're going to be sending out to, and whenever you're sending out emails to them, you're getting like a 15-20% reply rate, which is amazing. Like, where else can you do that for the cost that it has for cold email? Because cold email, it's really inexpensive whenever it's really starts turning out. Some of the clients that we've worked with, like we've gotten them really good results, which is I can't go into too many details exactly what campaign I want to, but I can't go into exactly their details. But but some of them get really, really good results in ways that they just can't reach other people. But just like every other avenue, like it's just a tool. So like it works for some people, it doesn't for others.
Well,
It's
it
not a one
is. I
size
mean,
fits all.
I'm not against email, at all, but it's the cold email, right? And
Mm.
um, now I get it. Like in business, in B2B, you got to be an idiot to send spam, because true spam by the legal definition, right? As long as you have a relevant offer, your title, your subject matches the body of the email, what you're sending, you have your contact info and a way to opt out, then that is not spam. Now, then again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. People will get mad and mark you as spam, but that's legally, that's not spam. So, I
I will say,
understand the legality of it, but it's like all these people buying multiple domains, spinning them, warming up email addresses. And I mean, like, okay, it's like you're kind of working around the system.
well, I think whenever emails are doing really well, they don't look like spam going out to the exact same message for everybody, but they look more like if you had an AE send out an email to like their list of companies that they're reaching out to. It looks like that, but at scale. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is that it's not that you're necessarily trying to spam at scale. It's that you're trying to effectively do what AEs or salespeople in general have done with email for a long time. That's been effective at that. But you're doing it in a very time saving way, very time efficient way, and you're using technology to kind of do that at scale. And oftentimes that in better ways in some situations, not all, but in a lot of situations, you're able to actually do it better as well.
Yeah. There's some guys that I know were in this little cohort and sharing information. And there's a gal on LinkedIn that just shared, her tech stack. It's about 7 tools. And she admitted it's crazy. And people are applauding her because she's saying she uses all these tools. Find someone that went to an event. Like right now, this week is the HubSpot Inbound conference. So she's finding conference attendees and doing the scraping and the enhancement and data enrichment and blah, 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 and sending out messages, lying. Hey, we're going to do a write-up on such and such. We've had good success with this, and see you're coming for that. We just ran across you at the event. Blah, blah. Can we? And okay, so she's getting good response. I'm like, all right, but I mean, you're lying. But she has no problem with it. So I don't know. That's where I get torn, because yes, if you send it with an honest reason and an honest message, it's not any different than direct mail, right? Reaching out with an offer to somebody that it should help. So how do you work around that? Just stay honest.
I think in general, like there's it's definitely a tight community of people who do cold email and stuff like that. But that's also like that's something you hear a lot of, for the people who are doing it really, really well, is trying to do quality, like always providing some sort of value, always providing something that in general makes the interaction between your client's brand and the person you're reaching out to a better one, which is really, really important, because like you're talking about spam and stuff like that, and emails that are not very honest and stuff like that. If you're honestly, it doesn't really matter either way, because if you're sending it from like if you're an employee of the company or if you're an agency, either way you're representing that company. So what you send out matters, and like if you're sending out stuff that doesn't do a good representation for the brand, like one, the company's not going to do well, which means you're not going to be able to keep them as a client for very long. Like your fates are really tied in that way.
Yeah.
So being aware of how you send out those messages, how you present yourself, how you communicate your message, but the message of the company that you're representing, that matters a lot. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of effort. But I will say, like, I don't think that's something that's unique to email either. Like marketing, cold calling, direct mail, pretty much every single form of sales, like outbound, runs into that exact same question. So I don't think that's really unique to cold email, though.
Yeah. But I mean, in direct mail, I don't have to hide my physical address, right? Or change my company name. Whereas like with cold email, they're warming up email addresses. Instead of the saleswhisperer.com, it's, the saleswhisperer.biz, the saleswhisperer.io, the saleswhisperer.org, the dash sales dash whisperer. So, I mean, that seems a little gray,
But
maybe.
part of it, well, it can be. But there's also a very technical reason why I would say even companies that are sending like from their employees, that kind of thing, they should be doing that anyway. And to be honest, like most sales teams should be not sending from their main domain anyway for technical reasons. So if you like say if you have a team of five AEs or something like that, to be honest, they shouldn't be sent and your company name is the company.co or something like that. They shouldn't be sending from the company.co domain name. And the reason for that is cumulatively over time, you're going to possibly degrade the quality and the reputation of that email domain. And if you do that enough, that's also where you are having like your interactions with your clients, like the really important emails. That's where you're doing very important things. So to help protect that, you can have these subdomains. I mean, marketing does the same thing. So whenever marketing sends out like newsletters and stuff like that, they shouldn't be sending them from the same domain as the main company. And that's to protect that main, because that main domain is really important. So like google.com isn't going to be sending emails from google.com because it's an extremely, probably a bad use case because they're the ones reputation. But but something else like another company, they're not going to necessarily want to send emails from their main domain because they want to protect that. Like, that's a really, really valuable thing. So you'd have subdomains to send those from that are a little bit more protected, and there's a layer of barrier there. Marketing does that exact same thing.
Well, I understand that. I mean, in theory, I understand that. But I mean, I've used my real domain for 18 years. I mean, I don't send spam. My spam complaint. So doesn't that make my brand and my domain stronger?
I mean, if you're not sending that much volume, and if it's just you, then you're probably not going to have that issue anyway. Like you're never really going to be sending enough to where that's actually an issue. But
Well,
if
but
you get
what's
it over the,
enough? I mean, at one point, I mean, I had 10, 12,000 on my list and I'd email them 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, so over the course of a month, that's, tens,
if you
tens of thousands. I mean, that's 100,000 a month, maybe. I mean,
you're sending 100,000 a month, then you're going to run into some issues. Like eventually, the stuff that you're sending, it will look like you're sending it, but then it's just landing in spam. And little do you know, that email is not doing anything. Nobody's ever receiving. No one's ever going to see it. If you're sending it 100,000 a month, and you're consistently sending the same ones, you're going to run into issues.
the same one, what do you mean? The same message? I mean, this would be a newsletter, right? It's always different.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's the same for each person that you're sending out, or it's pretty close. So, like, you may change the email each time you send it out, but the email that you're sending out to all 12,000 people is the same thing.
Yes.
So, yeah, and in all honesty, you're also seeing two worlds collide with this, because I'm saying this, and a lot of marketers would be like, well, that's all we do. We send it all from the same email, and it's perfectly fine. And for a long time, it has been. So, like, while I'm saying this, there's a lot of people who are still doing this, and a lot of practices that are still doing this, and they get results. So it's not to say it doesn't get results. It's just if you actually looked at that over time, you looked at how many of those were actually landing in your inbox, and over time, how especially with some of the changes with Google and Outlook, things like that, the more of those that mark you as spam, just as for a newsletter, even though they may have signed up for it, the worse that experience will be for all of the people. So as technology progresses, you have to kind of work ways around that to try to figure out how to provide a good experience, provide a good product. Because in that experience, some people may mark it as spam. Some people may actually want it. People who want it are maybe not necessarily going to receive it for nothing of their own, their own activities.
Okay. So let's say I'm using the saleswhisperer.io to send my newsletter. And sure enough, over time it diminishes. So I go from 12,000 effective people, and I don't know, start getting complaints, deliverability falls in half. Do I pull up, do I go back and get this original list of 10 or 12,000 and then go get, whispererofsales.com and just start emailing the whole list again? Like, what do you do? Or or am I just protecting the saleswhisperer.com to be like organically ranked, like just keeping my website, clean, and maybe my AdWords account clean? Is that why we're doing this?
Well, so imagine if you were sending out all those emails from your Sales Whisper domain, and then you had the same email that you maybe it's plugged into your Gmail account, but it's under the same account. And you want to send an email to somebody else that's a really important, it's just a one-on-one email. What you do in your marketing blast affects your main sending account because it's all coming from the same domain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where things like, just because you're doing them as separate activities doesn't mean they're not connected. Especially with a lot of changes that's happened over the past year or so, what you do in your outbound blasts can actually affect other areas. And if you're sending something to a prospect or something that's really valuable, and that doesn't even land in somebody's inbox, like that can be a really, really big thing.
So you're saying if I send a one-off email, it might not reach? But I mean, I would know that, right? I mean, if I'm sending a message,
if you send an email and they just don't reply,
like a cold, like a one-off email, or like I'm having a conversation with somebody over email?
If they reply, that's different. So if they've replied to you at any point, then you don't really have to worry about it. But say if you see somebody on LinkedIn, which is kind of a cold email, see somebody on LinkedIn, you're like, oh, hey, I saw that. I'm going to shoot over a quick email and ask them if they want to join our podcast. It's a cold email. They've never replied to you. They have no connection to you, and they don't reply to you at all. You don't really know exactly if it landed in their inbox or their spam. They may have just never actually seen the message at all.
I know. I'm the sales whisperer. I'm going to track you down. I'll fly out there. Yeah. I'll grab you by the neck. Okay, I got you.
So, but all of that gets to be really technical, and it's not. And to be quite honest, just like if you dove into like the SEO world or the marketing world and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff's going to be changing quickly. But the goal of all of that is basically staying ahead of Google or Microsoft or those kind of things, so that way you can effectively continue doing what it is that you're actually wanting to do, like you're doing it in a good way, and a non-spammy or non invasive way, I guess. So
yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to create another podcast on the CRM sushi, where you kind of share some of the tips and tricks that you're leveraging. But for those that are listening now, where do you want them to go? What do you want folks to do as a result of listening to this interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different things. It kind of just depends on what you're looking for. So first, I will say, like the other podcast that we're going to do, we're going to dive into clay. So I know a lot of your audience is salespeople. I used to work in sales for a lot, so I have that background. I understand that. So whenever we go through that podcast, it will be a lot of like some practical things in clay that will be really helpful. So one, watch that. So to promote your other podcast. The second is I also, on my LinkedIn page, I have a $1 clay table, which is literally you sign up, it's $1. You can't beat that. And it's 25 minutes, and we'll sit down and we'll literally go over any questions that you have. I've had a lot of sales reps. I've had, growth, VPs of sales, growth directors, whoever it may be. They'll just ask questions. If you're prepared enough, we'll actually dive in and do a clay table. There's a wide variety of things that we can do, but ultimately that 25 minutes it's yours. I open up a certain number of slots every day to just help as much as I possibly can. So that's the second area. And then the third being, if you are looking for straight, outbound help with a company or an agency or something like that, Then C17.ai is the company that I work with, and they can definitely help with more larger projects. So those are three different ways,
Okay. So I'm
depending on what you
linking
need.
there. So I've got C17, I got your LinkedIn, and then when we wrap up the CRM sushi, then we'll link there. But for those, because we're jumping the gun a little bit, because I'm still not 100% sure what the hell Clay is, right? So can you give a
That's what you
short,
reached out to me for.
can you give us a short little glimmer? Because this $1 offer is amazing. But I mean, people are like, I don't even know what Clay is. This is dumb. But it's, um, tell me what it is, and then I'll give it back to you to see if I understand it. I'm going to try to summarize it for mere mortals that are not Clay experts.
Sure. So as a sales professional, you've used Google Sheets, right? You've organized lots of different things in Google Sheets. You've taken little notes and stuff like that. You've had your entire TAM in your Google Sheet.
I have 4
You've
Google Sheets open right now as we speak.
Yep, yep. So as a sales professional, say you have a list of like 20,000 accounts, which is a lot. But say you have a list of like 20,000 accounts that you're responsible for, and you want to find some information about them.
Well,
What do you do?
let's be reasonable. Let's say there's 500.
Sure. Yeah,
let's say
that's
you're
perfectly
doing
fine as well.
and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because I've always talked about like the Chet Holmes ultimate sales machine and the Dream 100, right? Got your 100 targeted accounts to go get. So is that too refined, or is it better when you've got a huge universe and you need to data mine it to drill down?
Both situations are helpful. Definitely when you're doing it more scale, you'll definitely see more value in Clay because that's kind of what it's meant a little bit more for. But it doesn't matter for the volume because here's the alternative. We'll take the 100 here and say for those 100, a very basic example here. We can definitely go a lot further than this, but a very basic example is you want to go find the VP of sales for all these people. You want to find their email. You want to search their website and check for a little bit of research. So doing that process just for those three, if you want to do that for your list of 100, you might go into like Sales Navigator or something like that to find the people. You might go into Zoom Info to find the phone numbers or the emails, and then you may visit each website manually to go and do some of your research. That is a lot of time. I know because I have done it. I've sat there and done all of those things manually. And to be honest, in the sales world, a lot of this stuff is manual because at the end of the day, like you need to figure out what your edge is, you need to figure out what your research is, and you're just gonna go do it. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's the most efficient or not because at the end of the day, like you need commission, you need to make a sales. What are you gonna do to go do it? But Clay on the small scale, I would say for like AEs and things like that, it allows you to do a lot of those steps and those repetitive tasks in a spreadsheet format. So that way you can kind of mentally organize it like that. But you're able to do a lot of those things over and over and over again at scale. So that's the true value. So in that situation, what I just laid out, like finding your contacts, finding your emails, finding phone numbers, and then like researching the website. So like one of the things I used to do in one of my old sales jobs is I would go through and check the shipping policy on different retailer websites to see like, do they offer same day delivery? Who do they work with as their shipping providers? Do they have any like weird policies where they say like, it takes us 5 days to ship to Canada or something like that? I would research those manually. And you can do all that automatically in Clay. You set up those processes and it speeds everything up quite a bit. So in a lot of ways, it's a VA, but more specific for a sales process.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the reasons that I how I came to find you, 'cause, I'm working with a client right now, very small business, kind of an influencer type, uh, well known in his field around YouTube uh, videos, and he's having to grow. And I'm like, dude, I think you got to make some outbound calls. And I didn't have an easy answer for him as to how to curate this list. He's using Go High Level, and I've used it as a consultant, helping clients that have it. So I can navigate around it and but I'm not an expert at it. Like looking at the tech stack that he would need to build this list, that's what got me down this rabbit hole, and I ran across you. So does Clay replace like an Apollo or an Instantly or a Zoom Info or whatever? Can it find? And does it have the database, or are you giving it instructions? Will it go scrub the web to find people, or do you need like an Apollo, some type of contact database, and then Clay will mine Apollo based on the criteria you give it?
So in general, Clay is kind of it's the hub for lots of these different tasks. So while Clay, it does technically have a place in which you can use some of their enrichments to find phone numbers. It, it more it, it, the better situation is actually like you're using Clay to go out and find those phone numbers, and then you're also using Clay to go out and find the emails, and then find their LinkedIn. And you can use whatever data providers you want. So if you want to use Apollo, you can. Clay has an integration with Apollo. If you want to use like phone ready leads or different ones like that, they have integrations. Or if they don't have integrations, you can kind of use an API. It's a little bit more complicated, but you can bring in whatever subscriptions that you want. So that way you can use that data, but you don't necessarily have to go to Apollo, their website, pull all these different things, and then go to Prospeo to go find all these different emails, and then go to Lead Magic to go verify those emails. You don't have to go and manually send these lists around all over the internet. You can easily orchestrate all of that inside of Clay into a single repeatable workflow. That's I would say the magic of Clay. Sounds very simple, but whenever you start adding all this stuff in together, it can get extremely complicated. But it also, I've also said multiple times to other agencies that I worked with, is like, think of Clay as like at its most advanced stage. To be quite honest, Clay allows you to build little micro SaaS products. So rather than you building out rather than somebody comes on the market and says, "Oh, I have this awesome SaaS tool that does all this different research for you, and it finds your email and does all that." And by the way, it's X amount, but you got to be locked into their policies and their subscription and what they build. Instead, honestly, you can do very similar things in Clay, and you're not locked into anybody's development. You can tailor it and customize it to exactly what you need in your sales process. A question with that I always ask in the $1 Clay table, or whenever I'm talking, especially with somebody with in sales, is like, what do you do manually? Like, what is your manual process if you go out, when you reach out to a client and stuff like that? And then little by little, I'll replicate that inside of Clay. So I can say, this is what you do that works. This is how it's done, like on a more automated way to save you time. So that's what I would say is probably maybe a better way of describing it. I don't know if it's a good way, but it's a better way to describe it.
Well, so like this LinkedIn post, right? She's saying she uses zapmail.ai to set up emails, Smartly to set up warm up and campaigns, Prospeo to scrape emails, LinkedIn events as the sales trigger, licks to scrape the attendees, back to Prospeo to find their emails, Million Verifier to verify them, and then Persona AI to enrich the emails, and then Spintax to tweak the message so it's not identical every time.
Mm-hmm.
What all does Apollo replace? Or I'm sorry, not Apollo, Clay.
So it technically, Clay wouldn't replace any of that. But what Clay would do is, when she's talking about all these different things that she's doing, rather than her going out and doing each of those individual tasks, you would basically line them all up in a Clay table and say, when this is done, move to the next one. When this is done, move to the next one. When this is done, move to the next one. And the process that she's talking about, you basically set up the first step this, second step this, third step this, fourth step this on your Clay table, and then it runs it all automatically. But you're not using code, you're not using complicated programs and things like that. You pick the providers that you want, you arrange them like Legos or something. I always say, like, Clay is actually I was a big Legos fan when I was a kid, but Clay is very much like, here's a big box of blocks, And these are all your little providers, your Prospeo, your Million Verify, your LinkedIn, all these different things. Now arrange them in such a way that makes sense for you, and then click play. And that's
Mm-hmm.
Clay.
Okay. Interesting. So if somebody were to have Zapmail, Smart Lead, Prospeo, LinkedIn, Licks, Million Verifiers, there's 6, Spintax 7, Clay 8. So they need 8 apps to do this. Is
Not
that the modern day
necessarily,
tech
no.
stack of a SaaS company?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily need all of that, to be quite honest. But another thing to keep in mind as well is like you can have the subscriptions if you want, or inside of Clay, they already have those subscriptions. So say if you need to use, well, we'll take the example here. Say if you want to use Prospeo, and you need it for your 100 accounts, but like I don't want to go take the time to go get a Prospero account. I don't want to sign up for a subscription that I'm probably going to use 1/10 of, that kind of thing. Well, you use Clay. Clay has an integration with Prospero. You use your Clay credits, and then that's it. So yes, it'll say Prospero and like what you're doing with it, but you're not spending money directly to Prospero. You're spending money to Clay, like you're buying your subscription at Clay, and then they allow you to do all these different Lego pieces that you can put in together. Um, now, if you're going to do it at scale, it's more cost effective to do some of those subscriptions directly, but it's more convenient to just do it in Clay. So it really depends on like what's best for you. And sometimes it is. It makes a lot of sense just to use the credits inside of Clay, especially if you're playing around with things. You want to see what's going to work. You don't want to spend a whole day setting something up just to try out a product or something like that. Clay is at a hub that allows you to do a lot of that.
Yeah, that's cool. And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about. The chicken and the egg. You go get all these enterprise accounts and then go try to sell them to pay for it. So you're saying that's kind of built into Clay.
Some of them can be, yeah. It depends on which one you want, but in some cases it's useful to use them. Some cases it's not. It really kind of just depends. But in general, having that option is really, really valuable.
And then do you still need a CRM?
It depends on the situation. So whenever we're working with a client, like I will upload everything into their CRM. So like as I'm sending emails and as I'm doing different stuff, it will upload as contacts and companies inside their CRM. And if they're already there, it will update them, because a lot of times we can like refine that information. So you may have stuff in your CRM, but it's like 3 years old, and I guarantee you that VP of sales probably isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So if you need to update that kind of stuff, then basically we would do some of that updating as well.
And so who are you kicking over to the CRM? Basically, once they raise their hand, they reply, then let's go ahead and pull them over.
It depends on what the client wants. We can do it either way, to be honest. I've had some clients that say like, look, I want you to pull like our entire TAM. I want you to pull all these different people, spend as much time as you need to, but like make it a really, really good list. And then every person we send, regardless of whether or not they reply, it goes into their CRM because they want that information, because they're like, well, if it's worth you sending, we want it, kind of thing. But then I've had other clients that say, I don't want to make things messy. Like, let me know if they reply. And then that way we know like we've had engagement with them. And then if they convert from the email, great. But if they don't, like we'll have the
Yeah.
AE team, or the
Well,
AE like follow up in 6 months or something like that. So
yeah, especially, I mean, a lot of tools, they charge you by contacts. HubSpot will charge you by marketing contacts. You could have the whole list, but mark them as non-marketable. And then once they raise their hand, then, okay, I can put them in. So, yeah, that's interesting, because, I mean, that whole process is really just to get someone to raise their hand, right? Because then a human has to take over and get into that
yes.
cadence of, let me speak to them as a human now. And because that can't all be automated.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a really, really, really important point, because especially right now with AI and everything going on, everybody's like, fully automated AI SDRs and fully automated sales process and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you're missing the point entirely. Like, those of us that are doing like lead generation, like you're 100% right. Like our job is to sift through large amounts of people and find the people who want to raise their hand in an ethical way, a way that's not like making people angry. And then it's my job to take that and in a very easy way hand that off to a sales team so somebody can be human Like their job is to be human and interact with that person and take it from there. Like I think that's the process a lot of companies will win with. Now, obviously, it varies by company, but in general, I'm a big advocate of letting humans be humans and letting technology take over the part that needs to be automated.
Like, at what point does this make sense to leverage this kind of technology? I mean, is it, like my buddy that's in the YouTube space? I mean, he can only, they do hands on. I mean, he can handle a finite number of customers, 10, 20, 50 maybe. I mean, right? Not 1,000, not
Mm-hmm.
500. Um, you know, would he work with you for, 2 weeks, fill up his funnel for the year and be done? Like where does it make sense to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that's going to be different for every company, to be quite honest. But in general, I would say to take a little bit of a step back before that, I usually tell people, because I've had some like really early stage companies come and say like, "Hey, we want to do some outbound, we want to like really scale this up," and I'm like, "No, like you're not ready for it yet." And I will say that happens fairly often. Of companies that like startups and things like that, like they're really excited, like they've gotten a couple of sales, and they're like, "We want to like let this explode." And I'm like, "No, like I've been down this road. This is not what you should be doing." Like honestly, if you want to figure out your go to market, like you've had a couple of sales, and that's great. They were probably from like your network, which is nothing wrong with that. But like you haven't really got a client in a cold way yet. So you don't 100% know what your fit is yet. My response to that is always, "Hey, I will pull you a list of 100 contacts based off of the criteria that you give me. And I want you to manually reach out to every single one of these in as best way as you can. And come back to me once you're done with that. And then we'll talk about it. And ideally, I'll give you a list of 500 and you're going to do it again. And if the numbers for the 500 are still similar to the 100, we'll talk."
What do you
Because
mean similar?
if
Like conversion ratios or contact
yeah,
ratios?
yeah, because 100's a really small number. Like, but you're doing it manually, so I don't want to be like, "Here's 1,000. Like, go do all this work." Like, I don't want to freak them out too much. But 100 is still kind of a small number, and you could have one or two in there that you just got lucky. Like, good for you, but like bad for having repeatable numbers. So I usually say like, let's do another stage that's a little bit bigger, and if those numbers line up, then I know like there wasn't some sort of weird anomaly. You've actually figured something out. But more importantly than anything, they usually will figure out their sales process after doing that, because their 500th email is going to look way better than their first 10. And by the time they come to me and they're like, "Yeah, we've tried this, we've tried this, all the ones that got positive replies were this," and like that right there, that is what, I mean, you could technically do this with cold email at scale, but it's just not the right use for it. Like that portion, it's best for humans, in my opinion. Some people disagree with me with that, but in my opinion, I always say like you need to figure out who actually wants to buy your product and know that very well. Who wants to buy your product? How are you getting their attention? What messages are resonating? And once you figure that out and you want to scale, I can do it at scale and blow your calendar to pieces. But
Right.
if you don't know that, I'm an amplification of what you already know. So if you don't know that at all, I'm limited on how much I can actually help.
Yeah, that's a good point. Writing that down here. I like that. So, okay, so when you get those people with the 100 and the 500 and they're stuck on what to do, send them to me, all right? And then when I have people that know
Exactly.
when I have
Yeah,
people that don't know what to say, or they know what to say but they don't have someone to say it to, I'm gonna send them to you. All
there you
right?
go. That's a pretty. I haven't pieced that together, but you know what? That's a pretty good comparison.
But that's true, right? Because I'm good at helping them create that message. The email, the voicemail, the initial conversation, the cadence, um, the landing page, the offer, the negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
But that lead gen, like I'm an SEO guy, like self-taught. I don't do it for others. I can help them a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. I've run some ads. I'm not a big ads guy. So I'm I'm technical. I can understand, like talking about teaching Chinese or teaching English, right? Like I can kind of understand tech, right? But I can't really speak it. So, but this is a good blend, and I like your approach and being really like ethical about it, right? Not just, well, I have the power, so I'll just use it, scorched earth. Because I think all of this is going to change in very short order because there are a lot of cheaters out there. There's a lot of people they know how to use the tech. They're going crazy on it. And, it reminds me of like the old frontier days, the guy just running across the plains, shooting all the buffalo, cutting the tongue out, skinning the hide, and just leaving the meat, and it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, because
Yeah.
eventually you're going to ruin it for everybody. That's where I feel like we are with all this tech. So thanks for being an honest technical dude. Oh
Well,
man.
being on the sales side, like I don't know, you see the after effects of doing that kind of stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Well, cool, man. This went a lot longer than I thought it would, but I think people need to hear this. I needed to hear it. So thanks for carving out some time. And
yeah,
so I look forward to doing a little screen sharing with you and seeing some of your clay magic. So we'll leave people with a cliffhanger to check out the CRM Sushi podcast. How's that?
sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, man. Thanks, Clay. Good to see you. Clay, I
All
call you
right, see
Clay.
you too.
Tyler.
You can call me
Yeah,
Clay if you want.
you are synonymous with Clay. All right, I'm tired. All right, we're out of here. We got to start the new one. Bye.